She stood 6'3" in the ring, her massive frame casting a shadow over the trembling girl across from her, and for the first time in her career, heavyweight champion Victoria. The Wall Monroe felt something crack inside her chest, not from a punch, but from the quiet dignity in those dark eyes that refused to look away. Hey, beautiful souls, if you're ready for a story that'll completely change how you see love and strength, smash that subscribe button right now. Tomorrow's story is going to be just as incredible, and you won't want to miss it. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. I love connecting with our amazing global family. Fair warning, you're about to witness something truly unthinkable happen between a giant boxer and a young girl who was supposed to be humiliated. Grab your tissues, let's dive in. The underground gym reeked of sweat, ambition, and broken dreams. Fluorescent lights flickered over cracked leather punching bags that had absorbed decades of frustration. In the far corner, Victoria the Wall Monroe shadowboxed with mechanical precision, her 6'3" frame moving with surprising grace for someone who weighed 210 pounds of pure muscle. Victoria's hands, wrapped in frayed tape, cut through the air like sledgehammers. Each punch carried the weight of 15 years in professional boxing, 12 wins by knockout, 0 losses, and a reputation that made grown men cross the street. The other fighters gave her a wide berth, partly out of respect, mostly out of fear. "Vic, you got a visitor," called Tommy, the gym owner, his voice cutting through the rhythmic thump of gloves on leather. Victoria paused mid-swing, sweat dripping from her shaved head. Behind Tommy stood a man in an expensive suit, the kind of man who saw people like stock options. "Ms. Monroe, I'm Richard Blackwood from Elite Entertainment. I have a proposition." Victoria grabbed her water bottle, not bothering to unwrap her hands. Not interested in freak shows. "This isn't a freak show. It's an exhibition match. Big money, primetime television, and—" Blackwood paused, studying her reaction. "A chance to show the world what a real champion looks like." "Against who?" Blackwood's smile felt like broken glass. "A local girl. Amara Johnson. 17, hungry, thinks she can box?" He pulled out his phone, showing a photo of a small black girl with determined eyes. 5'4", barely 120 soaking wet. "It'll be over in 30 seconds. You'll make 50 grand, and she'll learn a valuable lesson about knowing her place." Victoria stared at the photo. The girl couldn't be more than 17, all lean muscle and quiet intensity. Something about her eyes reminded Victoria of herself at that age, before the world had tried to beat the hope out of her. "What's the catch?" "No catch, just make it memorable. The people paying want a show. They want to see what happens when an amateur steps into the ring with a real fighter." Victoria's jaw tightened. She knew exactly what those people wanted. They wanted humiliation. They wanted to watch a young black girl get destroyed for their entertainment, to confirm their ugly assumptions about who belonged where. 50 grand? Cash, plus bonuses if the fight generates the buzz we expect. Victoria looked around the gym, at the peeling paint, the duct-taped equipment, the dreams deferred and dying. $50,000 could change everything, could get her out of this place, maybe even buy her own gym. But as she stared at the photo again, something twisted in her stomach. Meanwhile, across town, Amara Johnson's apartment was 3 rooms of stubborn hope held together by prayer and duct tape. The walls were thin enough that she could hear Mrs. Garcia's telenovelas through the bedroom wall and the constant hum of traffic from the street below. She stood in front of the cracked mirror in her bedroom, throwing precise combinations at her reflection. Her movements were fluid, almost dancing, each punch snapping with surprising power for someone her size. "Mara, dinner!" her grandmother's voice called from the kitchen. 5 more minutes, Nana." "Food's getting cold, baby." Amara lowered her hands, studying herself in the mirror. At 17, she was all sharp angles and lean muscle, built like a whip rather than a hammer. Her dark skin glistened with sweat, and her eyes held the kind of determination that either lifted you up or got you in trouble. She'd been boxing for 3 years, training at the community center with Coach Williams, an ex-fighter who saw something in her that others missed. Not power, she'd never be a power puncher, but heart, speed, the ability to take punishment and keep moving forward. In the kitchen, her grandmother Esther sat at their small table, a plate of rice and beans waiting. At 72, Esther Johnson was the strongest person Amara knew, having raised 5 children and now her granddaughter on a home health aide salary. "You've been hitting that bag again," Esther said, not looking up from her own plate. "Coach says I'm getting faster." "Coach says a lot of things." Esther's voice carried the weight of experience. "Question is, what do you say?" Amara sat down, suddenly aware of how hungry she was. "I say I'm good enough to go pro. Maybe not today, but soon." Esther finally looked up, her weathered face soft with love and worry. "Baby, wanting something and being ready for it are 2 different things." "I know that, Nana, but Coach got me a fight, a real fight, with real money." Esther's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. "What kind of fight?" "Exhibition match, against some big-name fighter. They're paying $5,000 just to show up, 20 if I last 3 rounds." $20,000? Esther's eyes widened. That was more money than they'd see in a year. "I know it sounds crazy, but who you fighting, Mara?" Amara hesitated. Coach had been vague about the details, just said it was an opportunity that might not come again. "Someone named Victoria Monroe." Esther's face went pale. "The Wall Monroe. You know her?" "Baby." Esther reached across the table, taking Amara's hands in hers. "That woman is a killer. Professional heavyweight. She's never lost a fight. Every champion has a first loss. Not against a 17-year-old girl who weighs half what she does." Amara pulled her hands free, frustration rising in her chest. "So what am I supposed to do? Work at the grocery store for the rest of my life? Watch you work yourself to death because we can't afford... I'd rather work myself to death than watch you get hurt chasing something that ain't meant for you." The words hung in the air between them, sharp and painful. Amara stared at her grandmother, seeing the fear in her eyes, the love that made her want to protect rather than encourage. "What if it is meant for me?" Amara asked quietly. "What if this is my chance?" Esther was quiet for a long moment, studying her granddaughter's face. Finally, she sighed. "When's the fight?" "Friday night, downtown arena." "And you already said yes?" Amara nodded. Esther stood up, walking to the window that overlooked the street. Below, kids played basketball under a streetlight, their laughter mixing with the distant sound of sirens. "Your mama had dreams too," she said finally. "Big dreams about singing, about getting out of here. But dreams and reality..." She trailed off, lost in memory. "I'm not mama," Amara said firmly. "And boxing isn't singing. This is real. This is something I can control." When Esther turned back, there were tears in her eyes. "Baby, some things you can't control. Some fights you can't win." "Then I'll lose fighting." In the comments below, tell us, have you ever had to choose between playing it safe and chasing a dream that scared you? What did you choose, and do you regret it? Something in Amara's voice, the quiet steel, the absolute certainty, reminded Esther of herself at that age, before life had taught her to be afraid. "You sure about this?" "I'm sure I have to try." Esther nodded slowly, understanding passing between them. "Then I guess we better start praying extra hard this week." As night fell over the city, 2 women prepared for a collision that would change both their lives. Neither knew that in 5 days, everything they thought they understood about strength, about love, about what it meant to fight would be completely transformed. The stage was set, the fighters were chosen, and somewhere in the distance, destiny held its breath. The downtown arena buzzed with an ugly energy. 3,000 seats filled with people who hadn't come to witness sport. They'd come to watch a massacre. The air thick with cigar smoke and cruel anticipation, voices rising in a chorus of bets and jeers. 5-1 odds on the kid lasting 30 seconds. "I got 20 says she's down before the first bell stops ringing." Victoria sat in her corner, hands already wrapped, staring across the ring at Amara. The girl looked impossibly small under the harsh arena lights, her dark skin glistening with nervous sweat. She wore simple black shorts and a sports bra, her hair pulled back in tight braids. No fancy gear, no sponsor logos, just raw determination wrapped in a 17-year-old body. Remember what we talked about, Tommy whispered in Victoria's ear as he worked on her gloves. Make it quick. Make it clean. Don't let her suffer too long. Victoria nodded, but her eyes never left Amara. The girl was shadow boxing in her corner, her movements fluid and precise. There was something almost beautiful about the way she moved, like water finding its way around stone. Coach Williams, a grizzled man in his 60s, bent down to speak quietly to Amara. Victoria couldn't hear the words, but she saw the way the girl's shoulders straightened, the way her chin lifted slightly. Whatever he said, it wasn't surrender. The referee, a thick-set man named Martinez, called both fighters to the center of the ring. Victoria rose to her full height, towering over Amara by nearly a foot. Up close, the size difference was almost comical. Victoria's gloved fists were larger than Amara's head. Ladies, this is a 3-round exhibition. Keep it clean, protect yourselves at all times. Touch gloves. Victoria extended her massive glove, expecting the perfunctory tap that preceded most fights. Instead, Amara looked up into her eyes, really looked, and Victoria felt something unexpected pass between them. The girl's eyes weren't filled with fear or hatred. They held something Victoria hadn't seen in years. Respect. Pure, genuine respect for her as a fighter. When their gloves touched, Amara spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. Thank you for the opportunity. Victoria blinked, momentarily thrown. In 15 years of professional fighting, no one had ever thanked her before a bout. They cursed her, threatened her, tried to intimidate her, but thanked her? Never. What? I said thank you for giving me the chance to show what I can do. The simple honesty in those words hit Victoria harder than any punch she'd ever taken. This wasn't some cocky amateur looking for quick money. This was a young woman who understood exactly what she was walking into and was grateful for the opportunity anyway. The bell rang. Victoria moved forward mechanically, muscle memory taking over. Jab, cross, hook, the combinations she'd thrown 10,000 times. But something was off. Her punches, while technically perfect, lacked their usual vicious intent. Amara danced backward, her footwork surprisingly sophisticated. She didn't try to trade punches with the larger woman. Instead, she moved like smoke, slipping and sliding, making Victoria work for every shot. 30 seconds passed. The crowd's bloodthirsty cheers began to shift to confused murmurs. Victoria pressed forward, throwing harder combinations. A left hook that should have ended the fight instead found empty air as Amara ducked low and spun away. The girl's movement was hypnotic, not the desperate flailing of an overmatched amateur, but the calculated evasion of someone who understood distance and timing. Stand still and fight, someone screamed from the crowd. But Amara wasn't running. She was boxing. Every few exchanges, she'd dart forward, landing quick jabs to Victoria's midsection before dancing back out of range. The punches didn't hurt. They felt like bee stings against Victoria's iron conditioning. But they were clean, precise, perfectly timed. Round 1 ended with both fighters standing. In her corner, Victoria gulped water while Tommy worked frantically with a towel. What the hell are you doing out there? End this. She's better than I expected. She's a kid, a tiny kid. Stop playing with her. But across the ring, Victoria could see Amara in her corner, breathing hard but alert, listening intently to Coach Williams. The old man was animated, his hands moving as he gave instructions. Whatever he was saying, Amara was absorbing every word. For the first time in her career, Victoria felt something she'd never experienced before. Doubt. Round 2. The bell rang, and Amara came forward more aggressively. She was reading Victoria now, anticipating the veteran's rhythm. When Victoria threw her signature left hook, Amara was already moving, sliding under the punch and landing a sharp uppercut to Victoria's ribs. The punch shouldn't have mattered. Victoria had absorbed shots from women twice Amara's size without flinching. But this one found a spot between her ribs that sent an unexpected shock through her system. Not pain, something else. Respect. The crowd sensed the shift. The jeers became uncertain murmurs. This wasn't going according to script. Victoria pressed her attack, throwing combinations with increasing intensity. But for every punch she threw, Amara had an answer. Duck, weave, counter. The girl wasn't just surviving, she was learning, adapting, growing stronger with each exchange. Midway through round two, it happened. Victoria threw a massive overhand right, the kind of punch that had ended 12 professional careers. Amara saw it coming and tried to slip away, but the punch was too close, too fast. It caught her on the side of the head, sending her stumbling backward. The crowd erupted, sensing blood. Amara hit the ropes hard, her legs wobbling. For a moment, Victoria saw something in the girl's eyes she recognized. The look of someone who'd been hit harder than ever before, who was standing at the edge of consciousness and had to decide whether to fall or fight. Victoria moved in for the finish, her fists cocked like hammers. But then Amara did something that stopped Victoria cold. She smiled, not a grimace of pain or a desperate attempt at bravado, a genuine smile of pure joy, as if being hurt that badly was somehow exactly what she'd hoped for. "Is that all you got?" Amara whispered, just loud enough for Victoria to hear. And in that moment, everything changed. Victoria found herself smiling back. When was the last time someone had challenged her? Really challenged her? When was the last time she'd felt the electric thrill of fighting someone who refused to quit? They met in the center of the ring, trading punches with newfound respect. Victoria's shots were still devastating, but now she was pulling them slightly, testing rather than destroying. Amara's counters came faster and cleaner, her confidence growing with each successful exchange. The round ended with both women breathing hard, both changed. As they walked to their corners, Victoria did something that shocked everyone in the arena. She nodded to Amara, a small gesture of acknowledgement between fighters. Amara nodded back. In the crowd, the ugly energy began to shift. People who had come to watch a slaughter were witnessing something else entirely. A real fight between two warriors who had found something in each other worth respecting. Round three was about to begin, but both women knew the fight had already transformed into something neither had expected. Something that felt dangerously close to connection. The bell for round three rang like a death knell through the arena. Victoria stood in her corner, her mind racing. What the hell was happening to her? This was supposed to be simple. Knock out the kid, collect the money, maintain her reputation. Instead, she found herself genuinely impressed by Amara's heart, her technique, her absolute refusal to be intimidated. "Vic!" Tommy grabbed her shoulders, his voice urgent. "What are you doing out there? End this now!" Behind Tommy, Victoria could see Blackwood gesticulating wildly from ringside, his expensive suit wrinkled with sweat. The promoter's face was red with fury. This wasn't the show he'd paid for. "She's tougher than expected," Victoria muttered, avoiding Tommy's eyes. "I don't care if she's Muhammad Ali's daughter. You're embarrassing yourself out there. These people paid to see domination, not some feel-good sparring session." Victoria glanced toward Amara's corner. The girl was listening intently to Coach Williams, her dark eyes bright with something Victoria had never seen in an opponent before. Pure, unbridled joy. She was actually enjoying this, enjoying getting hit by someone who could break her in half. It was insane. It was dangerous. It was the most beautiful thing Victoria had ever seen. "Finish her, Vic. Your reputation depends on it." Victoria nodded mechanically, but inside something was tearing apart. She'd built her entire identity around being the most feared woman in boxing. The wall, unbreakable, unmovable, without mercy. That reputation had cost her everything. Friends, relationships, any chance at the kind of connection she saw other people take for granted. But now, looking at Amara, she caught a glimpse of something she'd thought was lost forever. The possibility of being seen, really seen, not as a monster or a freak, but as a person worthy of respect. Across the ring, Amara was fighting her own battle. "You're doing beautiful, baby girl," Coach Williams whispered, working on a small cut above her left eyebrow. "But listen to me. You proved your point. You've shown everyone you belong. Don't get greedy." "What do you mean?" "I mean she's been holding back. I can see it in how she's throwing her punches. Victoria Monroe doesn't usually let fights go 3 rounds. His weathered hands stilled on her face. "She's protecting you, Mara, and I don't know why." Amara felt her heart skip. She'd sensed it too. The way Victoria's devastating punches seemed to pull up just slightly at the last second, the way the older woman's eyes had softened when Amara smiled through the pain. Maybe she sees something in me. Maybe she does. But that woman has bills to pay and a reputation to protect. Whatever's happening between you two, it can't last. Not in there. The words hit Amara like ice water. Of course it couldn't last. This was a business transaction, not a friendship. Victoria was a professional fighter with everything to lose. Amara was a 17-year-old dreamer from the wrong side of town. But still, one more round, coach. I can feel it. She's different with me. This could be the start of something. Coach Williams sighed, recognizing the stubborn set of her jaw. Baby girl, don't confuse respect in the ring with something real. That woman goes home to her world, and you go home to yours. The bell rang. Both women met in the center of the ring, but something had shifted. The easy rhythm they'd found in round 2 was gone, replaced by tension and confusion. Victoria came forward aggressively, trying to recapture her cold professionalism. She threw combinations with renewed intensity, but there was something mechanical about them now, as if she was fighting against herself as much as against Amara. Amara danced and moved, but she was pressing forward more than she should, trying to recreate those moments of connection. She wanted to see that smile again, wanted to feel that electric recognition pass between them. Stay away from her! Tommy screamed from Victoria's corner. Stop playing around! The crowd, sensing the shift in energy, began to turn ugly again. Boos and catcalls rained down on both fighters. End her, someone screamed. Make her quit! Victoria felt the weight of 3,000 eyes, 3,000 expectations. These people had paid to see violence, humiliation, the confirmation of their ugly assumptions about who belonged where. If she didn't deliver, her career was over. No more main events, no more big paydays, no more respect. She caught Amara with a solid left hook that sent the girl stumbling. For a moment, the old Victoria took over, the killer instinct that had made her champion. She moved in to finish the job, her fists rising like weapons. But then Amara looked up at her, blood trickling from her nose, and whispered, I see you, Victoria. I see who you really are. The words stopped Victoria mid-punch. In 15 years of fighting, no one had ever spoken her name with such gentle understanding. They called her the Wall, or Monroe, or that monster. But Victoria, her real name, spoken like she was a person worth knowing, that was something else entirely. Don't, Victoria whispered back, her voice rough with emotion. Don't make this harder than it has to be. Too late, Amara replied and dodged backward, just as Victoria threw a half-hearted jab. The round continued, but both women were fighting ghosts now, fighting against the feelings they couldn't afford to have, the connection they couldn't allow to form. Victoria landed punches that should have ended the fight, but somehow didn't. Amara threw counters that were technically perfect, but emotionally conflicted. As the final bell rang, both women stood in the center of the ring, breathing hard, staring at each other across an impossible divide. The crowd was confused, angry. This wasn't what they'd paid for. Blackwood was apoplectic, screaming at officials about unsatisfactory performances and contract violations. But Victoria and Amara only had eyes for each other. They had both felt something real in that ring, something that transcended sport, transcended the ugly transaction this was supposed to be. And they were both terrified of what it meant. As they walked to their corners, neither acknowledged the other. The spell was broken, the moment passed, but neither could shake the feeling that they had just walked away from something that might have changed both their lives. The scorecard was announced, a draw. Technically, no one had won, but both women felt like they had lost everything. The medical tent behind the arena was supposed to be a quick formality, check for obvious injuries, clear both fighters, send them home. Dr. Sarah Chen had been working boxing matches for 12 years and had seen it all. Broken noses, split lips, the occasional concussion that required overnight observation. What she hadn't expected was the silent tension crackling between her two patients. Victoria sat on one examination table, her massive frame making the medical equipment look like toys. She'd refused treatment for the small cuts on her face. insisting she was fine. But her eyes kept drifting to the other side of the tent, where Amara lay on a second table, Coach Williams holding her hand. Pupils are responsive, Dr. Chen murmured, shining a light in Amara's eyes. But I'm seeing some delayed reaction time. How do you feel? Fine, Amara lied. The truth was, her head felt like it was filled with cotton, and there was a persistent ringing in her ears that hadn't stopped since Victoria's second-round bomb caught her on the temple. Nausea? Dizziness? Maybe a little dizzy. Dr. Chen frowned, making notes on her chart. I want to keep you for observation. Possible mild concussion? For how long? Coach Williams asked. At least 4 hours. Maybe overnight if... No. Amara tried to sit up, immediately regretting it as the room spun. I can't afford overnight. The insurance doesn't cover... Money's not the issue, Victoria's voice cut across the tent, surprising everyone. She stood up, towering over the medical equipment. If she needs observation, she gets it. I'll cover whatever the insurance doesn't. The tent fell silent. Coach Williams stared at Victoria like she'd grown a second head. Dr. Chen blinked in confusion, but it was Amara's reaction that mattered most, the way her dark eyes widened with something between gratitude and suspicion. Why? Amara asked quietly. Victoria shifted uncomfortably, suddenly aware that everyone was staring at her. Because it's the right thing to do. The right thing would have been pulling your punches in the first place, Coach Williams said, his voice tight with protective anger. I did pull my punches, Victoria snapped back, then immediately regretted the admission. Coach Williams stood up, his weathered face flushed. You call that pulling punches? You could have killed her. If I wanted to kill her, she'd be dead. Victoria's voice rose, filling the small tent. You think this is what I look like when I'm trying to hurt someone? Stop it, both of you, Dr. Chen intervened. Ms. Johnson needs quiet. Any additional stress could worsen a potential concussion. The two women glared at each other across the tent, years of different worlds and different struggles crackling between them. But then Amara spoke, her voice weak but clear. Coach, can you give us a minute? Mara, I don't think... Please. Coach Williams looked between the two fighters, clearly reluctant. But something in Amara's tone, the same quiet authority she'd shown in the ring, made him nod. I'll be right outside. You holler if you need anything. He left, and suddenly the tent felt much smaller. Dr. Chen continued her examination, checking Amara's reflexes, but the real examination was happening between the two fighters. Victoria remained standing, too agitated to sit, while Amara lay propped up on the medical table. Why did you hold back? Amara asked after a long silence. Victoria's jaw tightened. I don't know what you're talking about. Yes, you do. I felt it. Every time you threw a big shot, you pulled it at the last second. Why? Maybe I was just having an off night. Bullshit. The word came out sharper than Amara intended, but she was tired of pretending. I've watched tape of your other fights. You don't have off nights. You finish people. So why didn't you finish me? Victoria finally sat down, her massive frame folding into the small chair. For a moment she looked vulnerable, not like the unstoppable force who had dominated women's boxing, but like someone struggling with something she couldn't understand. You reminded me of someone, she said finally. Who? Me, before Victoria's voice trailed off, lost in memory. Before what? Before I learned that being strong meant being alone. The honesty in Victoria's voice hit Amara like a physical blow. She'd expected anger, defensiveness, maybe even cruelty. But this raw vulnerability from someone who'd built her life around being invulnerable, this was something else entirely. You don't have to be alone, Amara said softly. Victoria laughed, but there was no humor in it. You're 17. You don't know what you're talking about. I know what I saw in there tonight. I saw someone who was tired of pretending to be something she's not. And what do you think I am? Amara struggled to sit up straighter, ignoring the dizziness. I think you're someone who's been hurt so many times that you forgot how to let people get close. I think you built walls so high that you can't see over them anymore. Victoria stared at her, something raw and unguarded flickering across her face. You don't know anything about my walls. Then tell me about them. The silence stretched between them, filled with the soft beeping of medical equipment and the distant sounds of the arena being torn down. Dr. Chen finished her examination and stepped away to make notes, giving them a semblance of privacy. Victoria looked at this slip of a girl who'd somehow gotten under her skin in the span of 3 rounds. Amara should have been nothing to her. Another opponent, another payday, another forgotten face in a career full of them. Instead, she was something Victoria had never encountered before. Someone who saw through her armor and wasn't afraid of what they found underneath. My walls exist for a reason, Victoria said finally. What reason? To protect people like you from people like me. What if I don't want to be protected? The question hung in the air like a challenge. Victoria felt something crack inside her chest. Not physical, but emotional. A hairline fracture in the armor she'd spent 15 years perfecting. Drop a comment and let us know. Have you ever met someone who saw right through your defenses? How did it feel to be truly seen by another person? Before Victoria could answer, Dr. Chen returned with her clipboard. Ms. Johnson, I'm recommending overnight observation. The symptoms could worsen over the next few hours, and I want to be safe. I told you I'll cover it, Victoria said quickly. That's not necessary, Amara began. Yes, it is. Victoria's voice was firm, brooking no argument. This happened on my watch, in my ring. I'm responsible. Amara stared at her, seeing something in Victoria's eyes that made her breath catch. Not pity or guilt, but something deeper. Something that looked almost like care. Okay, Amara said softly, but I want you to stay. Victoria blinked. What? If you feel responsible, then stay. Keep me company. Make sure I'm okay. I don't think that's... 4 hours, Amara interrupted. Just sit with me for 4 hours. Talk to me. Help me understand why someone as strong as you thinks she has to be alone. Victoria looked toward the tent exit, every instinct screaming at her to run. This was dangerous territory, the kind of emotional intimacy that led to weakness, to vulnerability, to the kind of pain she'd sworn never to feel again. But then she looked back at Amara, lying there with a possible concussion because Victoria had put her there, and realized she couldn't leave. Not yet, maybe not ever. 4 hours, Victoria said finally, settling back into her chair. Outside the tent, the arena continued to empty. The ugly crowd dispersed, taking their disappointed bloodlust with them. The promoters counted their losses and planned their excuses. But inside the medical tent, 2 women who should have been strangers began the delicate process of becoming something more. Neither knew that these 4 hours would change the trajectory of both their lives. All they knew was that, for the first time in years, neither of them wanted to be anywhere else. Hour 1 passed in careful conversation, surface topics, safe territory. Victoria asked about Amara's training. Amara inquired about Victoria's career highlights. Both women circled around deeper truths like boxers feeling out an opponent's defenses. Dr. Chen checked on them every 30 minutes, monitoring Amara's pupils and coordination. The concussion symptoms were mild but persistent, enough to justify keeping her overnight, enough to trap both women in this small space with nothing but time and growing curiosity. It was during the second hour, when Amara dozed fitfully and Victoria sat watching her sleep, that the first real crack appeared. Daddy? Amara mumbled, her voice thick with medication and confusion. Daddy, where did you go? Victoria leaned forward, concerned. Hey, you're okay. You're in the medical tent. Amara's eyes fluttered open, disoriented. For a moment she stared at Victoria without recognition, then clarity returned with a visible crash. Her face tightened with embarrassment. Sorry, sometimes when I'm hurt, She trailed off, unable to finish. You call for your father? Amara nodded, not meeting Victoria's eyes. Stupid habit. He's been gone for 12 years. Victoria settled back in her chair, something in Amara's tone telling her this wasn't a story about death or divorce. Gone how? Walked out when I was 5. Told my mama he wasn't cut out for family life. Amara's voice was carefully neutral, but Victoria could hear the old pain underneath. Mama used to say he'd come back when he got his head straight. She kept saying it right up until the cancer took her when I was 14. The simple words hit Victoria harder than she expected. She'd built her life around the assumption that everyone eventually left, but she'd never considered what it must be like for someone to start with that knowledge. To grow up knowing that even the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally could just disappear. 3 years with your grandmother, Victoria said quietly. 3 years of her working herself to death to keep us afloat. You know what a home health aide makes? Barely enough to cover rent in the good months. Amara's hands clenched into fists. That's why I fight. That's why I took this match. Every dollar I make is one less hour she has to spend on her feet, cleaning up after other people. Victoria felt something twist in her chest. She'd been paid $50,000 for tonight's fight. More money than Amara and her grandmother probably saw in 2 years. Money that meant nothing to Victoria but could transform their lives. Your grandmother seemed worried about you, Victoria said, remembering the older woman she'd glimpsed in the crowd. She's always worried. Been worrying since the day she took me in. Amara shifted on the medical table, wincing slightly. She thinks boxing is going to get me killed. Maybe she's right. But you do it anyway. What choice do I have? Work at the grocery store until I'm 60? Watch her break her back so I can have a normal life? Amara's voice rose slightly. Then she caught herself, glancing toward where Dr. Chen sat at her desk. Sorry, I don't usually what? Talk about this stuff. It's not exactly inspiring conversation. Victoria studied Amara's face, seeing the careful walls the girl had built around her pain. They were different from Victoria's walls. Thinner, more flexible, but walls nonetheless. Your turn, Amara said, settling back against her pillow. My turn for what? To tell me why someone as successful as you thinks she has to face the world alone. Victoria's instinct was to deflect, to change the subject, to rebuild the professional distance that had somehow crumbled over the past 2 hours. But something about the way Amara was looking at her, without judgment, without expectation, just open curiosity, made the words come easier than they should have. I had a daughter once. The words fell into the space between them like stones into still water. Amara went very still, understanding instinctively that this was sacred territory. Had? Amara asked gently. Have. Present tense. She's 8 now. Her name is Maya. Victoria's voice caught slightly on the name. I haven't seen her in 3 years. What happened? Victoria stood up, suddenly unable to sit still. She paced the small confines of the tent, her massive frame making the space feel even smaller. I was 24 when I got pregnant, still climbing the rankings, still thought I could have it all. Career, family, the whole fairy tale. Victoria's laugh was bitter. Maya's father was another fighter, Marcus, light heavyweight, handsome as hell, smooth as silk. Amara noticed the way Victoria's hands clenched when she said his name. At first it was perfect. We were this power couple, you know? Both fighters, both hungry, both convinced we were going to conquer the world together. Victoria stopped pacing, staring at the tent wall like she could see through it to some distant past. Then Maya was born, and everything changed. How? Marcus couldn't handle not being the center of attention anymore. Couldn't handle that I was making more money, getting more press. Couldn't handle that our daughter needed things from him that he wasn't willing to give. Victoria's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. So he started using Maya against me. Amara felt her heart clench. Using her, how? Custody games. Emotional manipulation. He'd tell her I didn't love her, that I cared more about fighting than about being her mother. He'd schedule his visitation during my training camps, my biggest fights, forcing me to choose. Victoria's fists were clenched so tight her knuckles had gone white. And the courts saw a violent woman who made her living hurting people, and a charming man who could cry on command. They gave him custody. Full custody. I get supervised visits twice a month if he's feeling generous. Victoria finally turned back to face Amara, her eyes bright with unshed tears. You want to know why I built walls? Because the one time I let someone all the way in, he used my love for my daughter to destroy me. He took the most important thing in my life and turned it into a weapon. The tent was quiet except for the soft hum of medical equipment. Amara stared at Victoria, seeing her completely differently now. Not the invincible champion, but a mother who'd had her heart ripped out and was still fighting to keep breathing. "That's why you held back tonight," Amara said suddenly, understanding flooding through her. "What do you mean?" "In the ring. You held back because you saw someone's daughter, someone who might have people who love her." Amara's voice was soft with realization. "You couldn't stand the thought of taking someone else's child away from them." Victoria's composure finally cracked. A single tear rolled down her cheek, the first she'd allowed herself to shed in 3 years. "Every time I looked at you, I saw Maya. Saw her growing up wondering why her mother chose violence over love. Saw her believing his lies about who I really am." Without thinking, Amara reached out, her small hand finding Victoria's massive one. The size difference was absurd. Amara's fingers could barely wrap around Victoria's wrist, but somehow the contact felt perfectly natural. "She'll understand someday," Amara said firmly. "When she's older, she'll see through his lies. She'll know you were fighting for her, not against her." "How can you be so sure?" "Because I know what it's like to grow up without a parent who fights for you. And I know what it's like to finally meet someone who does." Amara squeezed Victoria's hand. "Maya's going to realize she has a warrior for a mother. That's not something you forget." Victoria stared down at their joined hands, amazed by how much strength could come from such a small gesture. For 3 years, she'd convinced herself that love was a weakness, that caring about someone only gave them power to hurt you. But sitting here with Amara, she remembered something she'd almost forgotten. Love could also be a source of strength. "Why boxing?" Victoria asked, needing to shift focus before she broke down completely. "I mean the real reason, not just the money." Amara was quiet for a long moment, her thumb tracing patterns on Victoria's knuckles. "When my daddy left, I used to have these dreams. Nightmares, really, about being too small, too weak to make him stay, too insignificant to matter." She looked up at Victoria. "Boxing makes me feel like I matter, like I'm strong enough to protect the people I love, even if I couldn't protect myself when I was little. And tonight? What did tonight feel like? Like I was finally strong enough to stand next to someone like you as an equal. Not a victim, not a charity case. A fighter." Amara's smile was radiant despite her exhaustion. "You have no idea what that means to someone like me." Victoria felt something shift inside her chest, not breaking this time, but healing. Here was someone who understood that strength wasn't about building walls or pushing people away. It was about standing up again and again, no matter how many times you got knocked down. Tell us in the comments, what's the most vulnerable truth someone has ever shared with you? How did it change your relationship with them? "Amara," Victoria said quietly. "Yeah, thank you." "For what?" "For reminding me what I'm really fighting for." As the third hour began, both women understood that something fundamental had shifted between them. They were no longer just two fighters who'd shared a ring. They were two wounded souls who'd found something in each other worth healing for, and that realization terrified them both. Hour 3 brought an unexpected gift, silence that didn't feel empty. Victoria had moved her chair closer to Amara's medical table, close enough that their conversation could drop to whispers. Dr. Chen had dimmed the lights, creating an intimate cocoon in the sterile medical space. Outside, the arena was fully dark now, the last of the cleanup crews having departed into the night. Amara's concussion symptoms were improving. Her pupils were more responsive, the dizziness had subsided, but neither woman mentioned it. Neither was ready for this strange sanctuary to end. "Tell me about Maya," Amara said softly, her voice cutting through the comfortable quiet. "Not the custody stuff. Tell me who she is." Victoria's face transformed. The hard edges softened, and for a moment, she looked like any mother talking about her child. Proud, tender, completely vulnerable. "She's..." Victoria paused, searching for words. "She's this perfect little person who sees magic everywhere. Like she'll spend an hour watching ants carry crumbs across the sidewalk because she's convinced they're building tiny cities. She sounds amazing. She is. She's got these huge brown eyes, bigger than yours if you can believe it. And when she was little, she used to tell me they were collection eyes. Collection eyes? Victoria smiled, a real smile that transformed her entire face. She said they were for collecting all the beautiful things in the world so she could keep them forever. Sunsets, butterflies, the way light looks through water. Victoria's voice grew softer. She collected my face too. Used to trace it with her tiny fingers while I was putting her to bed. Amara felt her heart clench at the love in Victoria's voice. What else? She's fearless, absolutely fearless. When she was 6, she decided she wanted to learn to box like Mommy. I found her in the garage wearing my old gloves that came up to her elbows, shadow boxing with this fierce little scowl on her face. Did you teach her? Victoria's expression darkened slightly. I was going to. I had it all planned out. Basic stance, how to throw a proper jab, all the fundamentals. But Marcus, she stopped, her jaw tightening. What did he do? He told the court I was trying to turn our daughter into a violent monster like me. Said I was putting her in danger, teaching her that violence was the answer to everything. Victoria's hands clenched. The judge agreed. Now Maya's not allowed to even watch my fights on TV. That's not fair. Fair's got nothing to do with it. It's about power, and he's got it. Victoria was quiet for a moment, then looked at Amara with something like wonder. You know, you're the first person I've talked about Maya with in over a year. Why? Because talking about her makes it real, makes the pain real, and I've gotten very good at pretending the pain doesn't exist. Amara reached out again, finding Victoria's hand. This time, Victoria didn't hesitate to take it. Tell me a happy memory. Just one. Something he can't take away from you. Victoria closed her eyes, letting herself remember. When she spoke, her voice was soft with nostalgia. Her 4th birthday. I was between fights, had a full month off for the first time in years. Maya wanted a princess boxer party. Don't ask me what that means because I had no idea. But she was so specific about it. What did you do? I rented this community center, decorated it with pink boxing gloves and tiaras, got her a tiny pink robe with Princess Maya embroidered on the back. All her little friends came dressed as princess fighters. Victoria laughed, a sound Amara had never heard before. Pure joy, untainted by bitterness. They had fights with pool noodles, and I taught them victory dances. Maya stood on this little platform I made, wearing her crown and her boxing gloves, and declared herself queen of everything. That sounds perfect. It was. For that one day, everything was perfect. She was happy, I was happy, even Marcus seemed. Victoria's voice trailed off, the memory souring. 3 months later, he filed for full custody, used that party as evidence that I was exposing our daughter to inappropriate influences. Amara felt anger rise in her chest, not just at Marcus, but at a system that could look at a mother's love and see only danger. He's an idiot. He's a master manipulator. Same thing. Amara shifted on the medical table, turning to face Victoria fully. You know what I think? What? I think Maya remembers that party. I think she remembers feeling like a queen, remembers her mama making her dreams come true. And someday when she's old enough to see through his lies, that's what she's going to hold on to. Victoria stared at Amara, amazed by the certainty in her voice. How do you know? Because I remember every moment my mama made me feel special, even though I lost her years ago. The good love doesn't disappear just because someone tells lies about it. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, both lost in memories. Then Amara spoke again, her voice lighter. My turn for a happy memory? Please. When I was 7, maybe 8, my mama was having a really bad day. Cancer treatment was kicking her butt, and she was so tired she could barely get out of bed. But it was Saturday, and Saturdays were our cooking days. Victoria settled back in her chair, something about Amara's tone promising a story worth hearing. I decided I was going to cook for her instead. I snuck into the kitchen and tried to make her favorite, pancakes from scratch. I didn't know what I was doing, obviously. Used salt instead of sugar, forgot the baking powder, made this awful, flat, salty mess. I bet she loved them anyway. That's the thing. She got up, came into the kitchen, saw this disaster I'd made, and instead of being upset, she started laughing. Not mean laughing, but this beautiful, joyful sound I hadn't heard in months. Amara's eyes grew bright with the memory. She said, "Baby girl, these are the most creative pancakes I've ever seen. What should we call them?" What did you call them? Amara's special recipe surprise cakes. And we ate every single awful bite while she told me stories about her mama teaching her to cook. Amara wiped away a tear she hadn't realized was falling. She was so sick, so tired, but she made that moment magical anyway. That's what real love does. It finds ways to create magic even in the worst times. Victoria felt something break open inside her chest, but not in a painful way. More like a flower blooming after a long winter. "You're going to be okay," she said suddenly. "What do you mean?" "I mean, you're going to be more than okay. You've got something special, Amara. Something that can't be taught or trained or bought. You've got the ability to find light in dark places. So do you." "No, Yes, you do. You think I don't see it? The way you paid for my medical bills without being asked? The way you held back in that ring because you couldn't stand the thought of seriously hurting someone's child? The way you're sitting here at 3 in the morning, making sure a 17-year-old girl you barely know isn't alone?" Amara's voice was firm, brooking no argument. "That's light, Victoria. That's love finding a way." Victoria felt tears threatening again, but this time they didn't feel like weakness. They felt like relief. "I don't know how to do this," she whispered. "Do what?" "Care about someone again. Let someone care about me. It's been so long since—" Victoria gestured helplessly between them. "This, whatever this is." Amara smiled, and it was like watching the sun rise. "It's friendship, Victoria. Maybe the start of something like family, and you don't have to know how to do it. We'll figure it out together." The simple offer, "We'll figure it out together," hit Victoria harder than any punch she'd ever taken. When was the last time someone had offered to figure anything out with her? When was the last time she hadn't felt completely alone in the world? "Together," Victoria repeated, testing the word like it was foreign. "Together," Amara confirmed. Dr. Chen checked on them again, noting Amara's improved condition, but recommending they wait another hour just to be safe. Neither woman complained about the extended stay. As hour 4 began, Victoria found herself doing something she hadn't done in 3 years. She allowed herself to hope. Not for anything dramatic or life-changing, but for something simpler and more precious. The possibility that she didn't have to face the world alone anymore. The possibility that love, real, unconditional love, might still exist for someone like her. And sitting across from her, Amara felt something similar blooming in her chest. For the first time since her mother died, she wasn't just surviving. She wasn't just fighting to keep her head above water. She was being seen, understood, valued by someone whose respect meant everything. They were both healing, both opening, both risking their carefully guarded hearts. And for this one perfect moment, it felt completely safe. The call came at 4:47 a.m. Victoria's phone buzzed against the medical table where she'd left it, the harsh ringtone shattering the peaceful cocoon she and Amara had built over the past 4 hours. Victoria glanced at the screen and felt her blood turn to ice. Marcus. "Don't answer it," Amara said softly, seeing the fear that had suddenly filled Victoria's eyes. But Victoria was already swiping to accept the call, her hand trembling slightly. "Hello." Well, the great Victoria Monroe, awake at 5 in the morning. Marcus's voice was smooth as silk, but Amara could hear the venom underneath, even from across the table. "Busy night? What do you want, Marcus?" "Just wanted to congratulate you on your performance tonight. Very touching, the way you went easy on that little girl. Almost looked like you cared about her." Victoria's grip tightened on the phone. "How would you know how I fought?" "I was there, baby. Front row seats. Had to see for myself what was keeping the infamous Wall from doing what she does best. His laugh was cold, calculating. Imagine my surprise when I saw you holding back, practically babying some teenage nobody. Get to the point. The point is, I've been documenting your questionable choices lately. This little friendship with that girl, for instance. What is she, 17? 18? Kinda young for you, don't you think? Victoria felt the world tilt around her. It's not what you're implying. Oh, I'm not implying anything. I'm just saying it looks interesting from the outside. Successful older woman, vulnerable young girl, medical tent meetings at 5 in the morning. Marcus's voice dropped to a whisper. How do you think that's going to play in family court? Amara sat up straighter on the medical table, her concussion forgotten. She could only hear Victoria's side of the conversation, but the way the color had drained from the older woman's face told her everything she needed to know. You bastard, Victoria breathed. Now, language. See, this is exactly the kind of behavior I've been documenting. Violent tendencies, poor judgment, inappropriate relationships with minors. We're not, doesn't matter what you are. Matters what it looks like. And it looks like a woman with serious boundary issues who shouldn't be trusted around children. Any children. The threat in his voice was crystal clear, including our daughter. Victoria closed her eyes, feeling everything she'd built with Amara over the past 4 hours crumbling around her. What do you want? I want you to stay away from that girl, completely. No training her, no mentoring her, no midnight heart-to-hearts in medical tents. You cut all contact, and maybe I don't file a motion to have your visitation rights revoked entirely. The silence stretched between them, heavy with years of manipulation and control. Amara watched Victoria's face transform from fear to resignation to something that looked like death. And if I don't, then I make sure Maya knows exactly what kind of person her mother really is. I show her the photos from tonight, the video footage of you treating some stranger's kid better than you ever treated your own. I make sure she understands that you chose violence over family, chose strangers over your own flesh and blood. Victoria felt something break inside her chest, not healing this time, but shattering completely. The fragile hope she'd allowed herself to feel, the connection with Amara that had made her remember what love felt like. All of it turned to poison by Marcus's twisted logic. I'll be filing my report with the court on Monday, Marcus continued, unless, of course, you make the smart choice. Cut the girl loose, Victoria. Save what little you have left with Maya. The line went dead. Victoria stared at the phone in her hand, her entire body shaking. In the space of 3 minutes, Marcus had taken everything. Her growing friendship with Amara, her fragile hope for connection, even the simple joy of helping someone who reminded her why she'd started boxing in the first place. Victoria, Amara's voice was soft, concerned. What did he say? Victoria couldn't look at her, couldn't bear to see the trust and affection in those dark eyes, knowing what she was about to do. Nothing. It was nothing. Don't lie to me. I can see you're upset. Victoria stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. Dr. Chen said you're fine. The concussion symptoms have cleared up. You can go home. Victoria, what's wrong? What did he... Nothing's wrong. Victoria's voice was sharp, desperate. This whole thing was a mistake. I shouldn't have stayed, shouldn't have let this. She gestured helplessly between them. This was unprofessional, inappropriate. Amara felt like she'd been slapped. Inappropriate? Victoria, we were just talking. We were connecting. We were nothing. The words came out harsher than Victoria intended, but she couldn't stop herself. Marcus's poison was already working, turning every beautiful moment of the past 4 hours into something ugly and shameful. You're 17 years old. I'm a professional fighter. What did you think this was? I thought it was friendship, Amara said quietly, her voice breaking. I thought it was two people who understood each other, who saw something worth protecting in each other. Well, you thought wrong. Victoria was backing toward the tent exit, desperate to escape before she broke down completely. Go home, Amara. Go back to your grandmother, your little community center gym, your small dreams. This world, my world, it's not for you. You don't mean that. I mean every word. Victoria forced steel into her voice, even as her heart shattered. You're a nice kid with some talent, but you're not championship material. You're not worth the trouble. The words hit Amara like physical blows. She sat there on the medical table, staring at this woman who had become so important to her over the past 4 hours, watching her transform back into the cold, distant fighter the world expected her to be. I see, Amara said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. I guess I misunderstood what happened between us. Nothing happened between us. Nothing that matters. Victoria turned to leave, but Amara's voice stopped her. He's got something on you, doesn't he? Your ex. That's what this is about. Victoria's shoulders tensed, but she didn't turn around. Goodbye, Amara. Whatever he threatened you with, we can fight it together. There is no together. Victoria spun around, her face a mask of anguish and fury. There never was. You're a kid who got lucky tonight, who lasted longer than expected against someone having an off night. That's all. Don't make it into some fairy tale about connection and friendship and... She stopped, seeing the tears streaming down Amara's face. For a moment, Victoria's mask slipped, and Amara saw the real pain underneath, the agonizing choice Marcus had forced her to make. But then the wall slammed back into place. Take care of yourself, kid. Victoria walked out of the medical tent and into the dawn light, leaving Amara alone with the wreckage of everything she'd thought they'd built together. Dr. Chen found Amara 20 minutes later, still sitting on the medical table, staring at the tent opening where Victoria had disappeared. Are you ready to go home, honey? Amara nodded numbly, not trusting her voice. As she gathered her things and prepared to leave, she couldn't shake the feeling that something precious had just been destroyed. Not just her growing friendship with Victoria, but her faith that love could survive in a world that seemed determined to crush anything beautiful. Outside, Victoria sat in her car in the parking lot, her head in her hands, sobbing for the first time in 3 years. She'd saved her visitation rights with Maya and lost the first real connection she'd felt since becoming a mother. Marcus had won again, using love itself as a weapon to destroy the thing he feared most, Victoria's happiness. But this time, the collateral damage included a 17-year-old girl who had done nothing wrong except believe that someone like Victoria could care about someone like her. The shatter point was complete. Both women drove home alone, believing they would never see each other again. Victoria sat in her empty apartment for 3 days, staring at the walls and replaying Marcus's threats in an endless loop. The space felt cavernous, high ceilings, expensive furniture, everything arranged to perfection and devoid of any real warmth. It was the apartment of someone who had given up on the possibility of home. On the kitchen counter sat 2 photographs, one of Maya from their last supervised visit, and one she'd screenshotted from the arena's website. Amara mid-fight, her face fierce with determination and joy. 2 people she'd failed. 2 chances at love she'd destroyed. The knock on her door came Tuesday evening, soft but persistent. Victoria ignored it at first, assuming it was another reporter wanting a statement about her disappointing performance against an unknown amateur. But the knocking continued, patient and rhythmic, until finally she dragged herself to the door. Through the peephole, she saw an elderly black woman with kind eyes and worry lines etched deep around them, Amara's grandmother. Victoria's hand froze on the deadbolt. She couldn't face this, couldn't face the accusation and disappointment she was certain to find in this woman's eyes. I know you're in there, child. Esther's voice came through the door, gentle but firm. I can see the shadow of your feet. We need to talk. Victoria leaned her forehead against the door. Mrs. Johnson, It's Ms. Johnson, and you're going to let me in because I didn't take 3 buses to get here just to talk to your door. Despite everything, Victoria found herself unlocking the deadbolt. Esther Johnson was smaller than Victoria had expected, barely 5 feet tall, but she carried herself with the quiet authority of someone who had raised children and buried dreams and kept faith anyway. She walked into Victoria's apartment like she owned it, taking in the expensive emptiness with a single glance. Nice place, she said, settling herself on Victoria's leather couch without invitation. Cold as a morgue, but nice. Victoria hovered by the door, uncertain. Ms. Johnson, If you're here to tell me what a horrible person I am, sit down, child. The command was delivered so matter-of-factly that Victoria found herself obeying, perching on the edge of an armchair like a chastised teenager. Amara hasn't eaten in 3 days, Esther said without preamble. Victoria felt her stomach drop. What? Oh, she pretends to, moves food around her plate, takes a bite here and there when she thinks I'm not looking. But I've been watching that girl grieve for 3 years, and I know what it looks like. Esther's eyes were sharp, assessing. Question is, what are you going to do about it? There's nothing I can do. It's complicated. Complicated how? You hurt my granddaughter's feelings? Or there's more to it? Victoria stared at this woman who had somehow seen through her carefully constructed defenses in under 5 minutes. It's not that simple. Most things aren't. Doesn't mean you get to run away from them. You don't understand. If I maintain any kind of relationship with Amara, I lose my daughter. My ex-husband will make sure of it. Esther was quiet for a long moment, studying Victoria's face. Tell me about your little girl. The request caught Victoria off guard. What? Your daughter, Maya, isn't it? Amara told me about her. Tell me what she's like. Victoria felt tears threatening again. She's everything good in this world. Smart, funny, brave. She sees magic everywhere she looks. And you love her more than life itself. More than anything. So you're willing to sacrifice everything else to protect that relationship, even if it means becoming someone she wouldn't recognize. The words hit Victoria like a physical blow. What do you mean? I mean the woman Amara described to me. The one who held back in that ring because she couldn't bear to hurt someone's child. The one who stayed all night in a medical tent to make sure a stranger was okay. That woman sounds like someone Maya would be proud to call Mama. Victoria's hands clenched in her lap. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I? I raised 5 children and helped raise my granddaughter. I know what real love looks like, and I know what fear masquerading as love looks like too. I'm protecting her. You're protecting yourself. Esther's voice was gentle but implacable. You're so scared of losing what little you have with Maya that you're willing to become the cold, isolated person your ex-husband says you are. You're proving his point for him. Victoria stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. Below, the city sprawled in all directions. Millions of lights representing millions of lives. Millions of people who somehow managed to love and be loved without destroying everything they touched. What am I supposed to do? Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. If I fight him, he'll poison Maya against me completely. If you don't, you'll spend the rest of your life wondering what kind of woman you could have been if you'd had the courage to stand up for what's right. Esther stood up, moving to stand beside Victoria at the window. For a moment, they stood in silence. 2 women from different worlds united by their love for the same fierce, beautiful girl. My granddaughter thinks she's not worth fighting for, Esther said quietly. Her daddy left, her mama died, and now the first person to really see her since then has walked away too. You know what that does to a young heart? Victoria closed her eyes, remembering the trust in Amara's voice when she'd said, together. I was trying to protect her. From what? From someone who cares about her? From someone who sees her potential? Esther turned to face Victoria fully. Or were you protecting yourself from having to risk everything for someone else's happiness? The question hung in the air between them, sharp and unavoidable. Victoria thought about Maya, about the little girl who collected beautiful things with her eyes. What would Maya think of a mother who was too afraid to fight for friendship, too scared to stand up to bullies, too broken to believe in love? Would Maya be proud of that woman, or would she be ashamed? There's a reason you held back in that ring, Esther continued, a reason you stayed in that medical tent all night, a reason you're sitting here 3 days later, still thinking about my granddaughter instead of moving on with your life. What reason? Because real love doesn't calculate costs. Real love doesn't weigh risks. Real love just fights, even when the odds are impossible, even when fighting might cost you everything. Victoria felt something shift inside her chest, not breaking this time, but crystallizing. For 3 days, she'd been paralyzed by fear, trapped between two impossible choices. But maybe they weren't impossible. Maybe Marcus only had power over her as long as she accepted his version of reality, his definitions of what love looked like. If I fight him, Victoria said slowly, I might lose Maya entirely. And if you don't fight for what's right, you'll lose yourself. And eventually you'll lose Maya anyway, because she'll grow up and realize her mama was a coward. The word hit Victoria like a slap, but it was the slap she needed. She thought about Amara's smile in the ring, the way the girl had looked at her with such pure respect and affection. She thought about Maya's collection eyes, always gathering beautiful things to keep forever. Maybe it was time to stop hiding from love and start fighting for it. All of it. What do I do? Victoria asked. Esther smiled for the first time since arriving. First, you call my granddaughter and apologize. Then you figure out how to be the kind of woman both your girls can be proud of. Victoria looked at her phone, sitting silent on the coffee table. One call could change everything, or destroy what little she had left. But for the first time in 3 days, the choice felt clear. It was time to stop letting fear make her decisions. It was time to fight for love instead of running from it. Victoria picked up her phone. The phone rang 3 times before Amara answered, her voice hollow and distant. Hello? Amara. Victoria's voice cracked on the name. I need to tell you something. There was a long pause. In the background, Victoria could hear the sounds of the community center gym, the rhythmic thump of gloves on bags, the squeak of shoes on canvas. I'm training, Amara said finally, her tone carefully neutral. Please, just give me 5 minutes. Another pause, then, reluctantly, 5 minutes. Victoria took a shaky breath, aware that Esther was watching her with quiet intensity from the couch. I lied to you. In the medical tent, when I said nothing happened between us, when I said you didn't matter. The words came out in a rush. Everything that happened between us was real. Every moment, every connection, every piece of hope I felt. It was all real. Silence. Then why? Because I was scared. Because my ex-husband threatened to take away what little time I have left with my daughter if I maintained any relationship with you. Because I've spent 3 years learning that love is a weapon people use against you, and I forgot that sometimes it's also the only thing worth fighting for. Victoria could hear Amara's breathing on the other end of the line, quick and unsteady. Amara, I need you to know something. You are worth fighting for. You are worth every risk, every consequence, every battle I'll have to face. You reminded me what strength really looks like, and I'm not going to let fear make me forget again. What are you saying? I'm saying I'm done running. I'm done letting him control my life through threats and manipulation. I'm going to fight for you, for us, for the friendship we built. And I'm going to fight for my daughter too, because she deserves to know who her mother really is. The silence stretched so long, Victoria wondered if the call had dropped. Then she heard something that made her heart soar. Amara was crying. I thought I wasn't worth it, Amara whispered. I thought I was just another disappointment. Never. You are never a disappointment. You are brave and strong and kind, and any parent would be proud to claim you as family. Family? If you'll have me, if you'll let a broken-down old fighter be part of your world, you're not broken down. You're just learning how to fight for the right things. 2 weeks later, Victoria walked into Marcus's lawyer's office with her own attorney and a folder full of documentation. She'd spent 14 days gathering evidence, building a case, preparing for the battle of her life. Marcus was already there, confident and smug in his expensive suit. He looked at Victoria with the same condescending smile he'd worn throughout their custody battles. Victoria, still playing the hero, I see. Still playing the victim, I see, she replied calmly. Her lawyer, Sarah Chen, Dr. Chen's sister and one of the city's most respected family attorneys, spread documents across the conference table. Mr. Valdez, we're here to discuss your recent threats against my client and your attempts to control her through emotional manipulation. Marcus's lawyer shifted uncomfortably. I'm not sure what you're... We have recordings, Sarah said simply. Phone calls where Mr. Valdez explicitly threatens to fabricate evidence and poison his daughter against her mother unless Ms. Monroe abandons a mentoring relationship with a young athlete. Victoria watched the color drain from Marcus's face. We also have testimony from multiple witnesses about Mr. Valdez's pattern of emotional abuse, financial manipulation, and attempts to isolate Maya from her mother's influence. Sarah pulled out another folder, including some very interesting financial records showing money being funneled from Maya's college fund to support Mr. Valdez's gambling addiction. The room fell silent except for the ticking of the wall clock. "What do you want?" Marcus asked, his smooth facade finally cracking. "Joint custody," Victoria said firmly. "Real joint custody, with no restrictions on my ability to maintain appropriate relationships with athletes I mentor. Maya gets to know who her mother really is, without your poison in her ear." "And if I refuse?" Sarah smiled coldly. "Then we file criminal charges for extortion and go to court with evidence of parental alienation, financial mismanagement, and emotional abuse. Your choice." Marcus stared at Victoria, seeing something in her eyes he'd never seen before. Unshakable resolve. "Fine," he said finally. "Joint custody, but I want—" "You'll take what we offer," Victoria interrupted, "because you're lucky we're not pushing for full custody ourselves." An hour later, Victoria walked out of the office with an agreement that would give her 3 days a week with Maya, including weekends and holidays. No supervision required, no restrictions on her personal relationships. For the first time in 3 years, she was truly free. The community center gym was packed when Victoria arrived that evening. Word had spread through the boxing community about the exhibition rematch between Victoria Monroe and Amara Johnson. But this time, it wasn't about humiliation or money, it was about celebration. Amara stood in the center of the ring, wearing the same simple black shorts and sports bra from their first fight. But everything else had changed. Her posture was confident, her smile radiant, her eyes bright with joy instead of desperate determination. Victoria climbed through the ropes, and the small crowd, mostly kids from the community center and their families, erupted in cheers. "You ready for this?" Victoria asked, pulling on her gloves. "I've been ready my whole life," Amara replied. They touched gloves in the center of the ring, but this time there was no tension, no fear, just pure, unbridled joy at being able to share what they both loved most. The bell rang. They moved toward each other like dancers who'd found their perfect partner. Victoria threw combinations with precision and control, while Amara responded with fluid movement and lightning-fast counters. It was boxing as art, boxing as conversation, boxing as pure expression of mutual respect. In the crowd, Esther wiped away tears of joy, watching her granddaughter shine like she was meant to. And in the front row, a little girl with huge brown eyes watched her mother move with grace and power, collecting every beautiful moment with her collection eyes. Maya had insisted on coming when Victoria finally called and asked if she wanted to see her mama box. She'd been nervous, unsure what to expect after years of her father's warnings about her mother's violence. Instead, she saw something magical, her mother helping another young woman learn to fly. What did you think of this story? Tell us in the comments about a time when someone fought for you when you thought no one would. How did it change your life? After 3 rounds of the most beautiful boxing either woman had ever experienced, they met in the center of the ring. The crowd was on its feet, but Victoria and Amara only had eyes for each other. "Thank you," Amara whispered, pulling Victoria into a fierce hug. "Thank you," Victoria whispered back, "for reminding me what I was really fighting for." As they separated, Victoria looked toward the crowd and saw Maya climbing through the ropes, her small face bright with excitement. "Mama, that was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen." Victoria knelt down as her daughter threw herself into her arms, finally understanding what her collection eyes had been trying to tell her all along. Some things were too beautiful to keep hidden, too precious to protect through isolation. Love was meant to be shared, fought for, celebrated. "Mama," Maya whispered in her ear, "can you teach me to box like that? Like you and Amara?" Victoria looked over Maya's head at Amara, who was grinning so wide her face might split in half. "I think we can arrange that," Victoria said. 6 months later, Victoria opened her own gym with Amara as her assistant coach. Maya came every weekend, learning not just how to box, but how to fight for the things that mattered. Esther stopped by daily, becoming the unofficial grandmother to every kid who walked through the doors. They called it Champion's Heart Gym, and their motto was simple: we don't just train fighters, we train family. Victoria had finally learned the difference between being strong and being alone. Amara had finally learned that she was worth fighting for. Maya had learned that her mother was a hero who fought for love instead of against it. And sometimes, in a world that seemed determined to keep people apart, love found a way to bring the right people together. The giant boxer and the young girl who had been forced to fight to humiliate her had instead found something unthinkable. A family forged in courage, tempered by truth, and bound together by the revolutionary idea that some things were worth every risk. They had both won the only fight that ever really mattered, the fight for love.
If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out. Click on the image showing on your screen right now to watch the next one. Thank you for watching this story to the end.